Welcome to Bigfoot and Paranormal Encounters podcast. And now your host, Dave Weichert.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to... That wasn't supposed to happen. We'll just go ahead and let that play for a few seconds. All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Bigfoot and Paranormal Encounters podcast. I'm going to make a couple quick announcements before I bring our guest on. Our guest tonight is going to be Les Odell from West Virginia, and we're going to be talking about some paranormal, and then we're going to be talking about Bigfoot as well. So let me get something here set up. Come on. Okay, doesn't want to work for me, but I'll get it working. Okay, here we go. All right, just want to give a quick shout out to my good friend Scott Cash Travel. If you want to go on a cruise or you want to go on a nice vacation, give Scott a call. He can be reached at 410-622-0099. And I also want to give a shout out to my good friend Robert Geehan for helping me at times with a number of things. And I want to give a quick shout out to Linda L. Wood for the artwork that she does for me from time to time. So let's go and bring our guest in. Les,
Yeah, I'm here. I don't see anything
okay.
though.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any video. Let me turn it back off and turn it back on again. Now, um, okay. I'm just seeing the circle where your avatar is supposed to be. That's what I'm seeing right now. Turn it off and turn it back on again. Now,
Yeah, it's showing me having my mic active, but the camera's showing a red line through it.
a red line through it. Okay.
Hmm.
All right. Let me check something out here. Okay. Um, Let me go back to here. Try that again. Okay, let me make sure. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure what the issue is. I can't seem to figure it out on my side. I don't think it's on my side. I'm not sure. I really don't know. But I'll try to figure it out as we go along. But let me welcome to the podcast, and thank you for being a guest tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out here too. I don't know what's going on.
Okay. Yeah, let's try to figure that out before I jump into questions. I have the chat room open, but nobody's jumped in there yet. Now, last week I had a little problem with Restream. I thought it was my internet provider, but I did a test today and it seemed to be working pretty good. I had you earlier.
Yeah,
Um,
it's just telling me there's a circle through it. I don't, and it says I need to enable camera, and I'm trying, and it won't come on.
okay, let me just enable it. Okay, we can do one of two things. We can go ahead and continue without seeing you, or we can also maybe you might want to try to jump into disable and jump back in there, or what do you think?
Yeah, would I use the same link from before?
Yeah, you would use the same link.
Okay. Yeah,
You
I'll
know
just
what?
let me.
I'm not 100% sure because I've never experienced this problem before. So um, I think the link would be the same. I don't think it would change.
Okay. Yeah, I'm clicking
So
on it, and where it says enable camera, and it's not letting me do anything.
right. So turn that all back on. Same thing. Um, Let me take a look real quick before we decide which
Okay.
route we want to take. I'm going to look at the settings and see if there's, let's see, settings. Shoot. Everything. So now get rid of. Oh, what's it doing that? Okay. Now it's back. But let me uh, get rid of that. Okay. Yeah, I'm still not getting anything. I checked the settings and I'm gonna check one more thing here. Uh, okay, let's see. Uh, that's not working either. Okay. Yeah, it's still not showing you, so I'm not
Okay.
sure.
You want me to just want me to go ahead and
What
leave and jump out and try to come back in?
Yeah, go ahead and do that, and I'll just I'll keep checking on my end as well.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so we're having a technical issue here. He's gonna log out, come back in, and we'll see what happens from there. So just bear with us, and we'll see what happens in a moment or two. Okay, I think I have. All
All
right,
right.
I can see you.
You got me now. Yeah, I don't know what was going on. Every
There
time I
we
tried
go.
to click on it to bring it up, it wouldn't do anything. It wouldn't activate it or anything.
Yeah,
Oh, there we
podcasts
go.
can be fun. So good. All right. So
All right.
before
Well,
I start asking you questions, I'm going to go back to, let's see, where is it? All right, I'm going to go ahead and put your bio up there.
Les Odell is a native West Virginian born and raised in Marion County. He resides in Idemay, West Virginia with his wife Jennifer and is the proud dad of 4 sons. As a young child, Les experienced paranormal activity that would later fuel his curiosity of high strangeness. This curiosity would later lead him down the path of paranormal investigating. In 2017, Les founded West Virginia Cryptids and Strange Encounters. Since then, he has spoken to numerous people about their experiences with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, and other strange creatures. Bigfoot, however, has become the center of his investigations and research. Les has been invited to be a guest on a number of podcasts and documentaries. He is also a major contributor to the West Virginia Bigfoot Museum in Sutton, West Virginia, and the organizer of the Bigfoot Speaker Symposium portion of the West Virginia Bigfoot Festival. Let's welcome Les to the podcast.
All right. Now, all I got to do is just let me go over here. I'm going to put you right beside me, and let's see. Yeah. There we go. Now we got it. All right, Les, again, I want to thank you for being a guest tonight. And I've heard a lot of good stories about you and about your work. And it's an honor to have you on as
well,
a guest tonight. And
thank you for having me on.
let me, Mhm, you're welcome. Let me let the listeners know there's a funny thing about Restream, using Restream. When you go to post your question for myself or Les, please put your first name uh, in with your question, so I know who you are. Because if you don't give Restream permission, they won't post your name at all. So I'm gonna put this one. Let's see. How come that's not going up there? All right, let's go back here. Here we go. All right. See what I'm talking about? Les is the man. But I'm not sure who that's coming from. That's got to be one of your good friends, or someone that knows you real well. So let me leave that up there. Les, I'm going to start off. Tell us what sparked your interest in the paranormal, and then we'll move on to Bigfoot.
Um, Mainly what got me into doing it. I mean, was something that happened to me when I was a kid. Uh, it's the same thing that you technically hear from a lot of people when it's into the paranormal stuff. It's an experience I had as a child. When I was around 7 or 8 years old, I throughout my lifetime up until then, or even a little after then, my family and I, we moved quite a bit. I don't really know why, but it just seemed like we moved quite a bit. But when I was in second grade, so I was like 7 or 8 years old, we moved into this old farmhouse. It was clear at the end of this hollow here in Marion County, and it was to me, it was just an awesome place to be. We had land to run on. There was a pretty nice sized farmhouse. We had some barns and whatnot to just hang out and just be a kid. But ever since we moved into the house, I had the feeling that there was something strange about the house, and then I would have the feeling that I was being watched quite a bit. That type of stuff. And if it was if this experience didn't happen, I would say it was probably just a lot of a child's imagination. But there was things like walking past the certain doorways in the house, and it felt like something was going to grab me from the doorways and yank me into the rooms. But we was there for a little while, and my brother and I shared a room. We shared a bunk. We had bunk beds in the room, and our room was just right off my mom and dad's room. And after we was there for just a little bit, and we wasn't there actually the entire time. We wasn't, the length of the time we was there wasn't very long, but we was there for just a little bit, and we'd go to the room, we go to bed, and I tell people it's funny because the house was so old, it had push buttons for the lights, like there wasn't a flip switch. It was just like a little round push buttons, because the house was built probably in the late 1800s and whatnot. But you'd push the button for the light, and there was something about the light. The contacts wouldn't contact immediately. You had about a second and a half, 2 seconds to run and jump into bed. So that's what I would do. I'd push that button and I'd run across the room and jump in my bed. Well, like I said, after being there for a little while, I had started noticing when I was on the bottom bunk, my brother was on the top, but I'd lay there in bed and I started noticing across the room. Like, let me set it up just a little bit. Like if you walked in the doorway and the room went, lengthwise, and there was a window, not quite directly across from the doorway, but there was a window in the other room. And then there was a corner off to the right side of the doorway, corner off the left side of the doorway. And then our bed was down that left wall in a far corner. Well, I would, go to bed, and I started noticing these, I don't want to say shadow figures, but they were shadows probably, 2 to 3 feet tall, would move from the corner near the door along the wall and over toward the window. And I'd watch them, and I had no idea what they were, and again, if it could be a kid's imagination, but because of the window there, but no, I would watch them move, and I'd cover my head up and hope, at times I would try to scream for my dad, and I was just so terrified I couldn't even scream for my dad, but I'd cover my head up. I'd either fall asleep or, eventually I'd look and the shadows were gone. Well, after this happened a few times, I noticed that there was a much larger shadow in the corner, and this one actually had shape. It was like a full figure, I guess, body, except for from about where the waist was down, it was solid, but you could see the head, you could see the shoulders, you could see the arms, like the torso part. And I'd try to scream for my dad, couldn't scream for my dad, and I'd cover my head up, and just hide. Eventually I'd look again and it'd be gone. Well, on the third time, this didn't happen, nights in a row. It was spread out over a little bit of time. The third time that this happened, I was, went into bed, laying there, started seeing the shadows again, and I noticed this thing standing in the corner again. Here it was standing in the corner, and I tell people now that I call it the overseer, because it seemed to watch, like it was looking and watching the other shadows. Well, this time, instead of covering my head up and hiding, I actually sat up in bed and like scooted back into the corner. Where the bed was in the corner, the headboard, or the post for the top bunk, and I scooted back into the corner. And as soon as I did that, this thing went from watching the shadows across the wall, it turned its head toward me, looked at me, and within a split second was come across the room, like for lack of better words, glided or almost instantly. But
Mm-hmm.
it come across the room underneath the top bunk and leaned in and was within probably like 8-10 inches from my face or so. And
Right.
I can remember seeing it. There was no facial features. There was no like eyes I could see or anything like that. All I could see was this shape, and I could see the shape of the head. I could see the shoulders. I could see the arms. But the weird thing is, it wasn't like what you hear normally people talk about a shadow person being. It wasn't uh, like that black room black, like opaque or whatever, non-translucent black, like almost like a cutout against it. It was that color. It was very black, but the it was almost like smoke or whatever inside the shape was rolling around, like moving. That's best I can. That's best I can, just describe it. It's just like the smoke was rolling around. Um, then it eventually, to me, what seemed like forever, but it probably went in just a few seconds. It backed up, and I watched it turn. Like when it backed up, it would turn to its left. It had turned to its left, and like again, for lack of better words, it floated or glided or whatever you want to call it through the doorway, and I watched it go around the corner to the left of the doorway, which put into my mom and dad's room, and then it was gone. And that was the last time I seen it, and I forget how long after that, but it wasn't too long after that we moved again.
Wow. Now, Bill's asking, did you feel it touch you?
No, I didn't feel anything. It didn't touch me. I just remember, feeling terror. Basically, it was right up,
Right.
like I said, within 8-10 inches from my face or so.
Ah, okay. Wow. Let me throw this one up there. Good old Bill Rigby. I hope he's doing well,
Yeah,
and I hope he's getting better. But check this one out.
yeah. I figured that's who it was a little bit ago. Um, Bill's a good
Right.
friend of mine. Yeah, we just went hiking a couple weeks ago up there in Shenango, up at Shenango Lake in
Uh-huh.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah. So, I hate these pups. Okay, let's go. Sorry about that. So, how long did these uh, paranormal things go on for you as a child? How long?
Oh, I mean, that was one that I mean, I had other ones,
Right.
earlier, but that was the one I think that stuck with me the most
The
and
most. Okay.
got me started into or looking into paranormal, or I
Right.
guess you'd call as a kid. But I get it instead of it completely turning me away from it and scaring me to death. I started reading books as a kid that I could find, which weren't any magnificent books, but anything had a ghost story in it. Anything that had a strange thing in it, I looked into it. Then I, like if I found a book with Loch Ness monster in it, I really enjoyed reading that.
Right.
Um, but yeah, there was other things that happened when I was younger, and it's a whole story, but behind a lot of that, and I've told Bill about it. But my dad would call it the curse, the Odell curse, and I think that's part of what I experienced was from that,
Right.
because he experienced stuff as a kid, and he's seen in it. Then later in life, when he was older, when I was younger than that age, I was like 5 or so. There was something that happened that I think I don't want to put this kind of got transferred toward me, and then I started experiencing stuff. Um, and then later in life, as I got a little bit older, and started talking to him about it. And that's when he told me about he considered a curse. And then I would talk to my grandma. My grandma was
Right.
really into the supernatural, I guess you'd say. But my mom was not a believer at all. But but she did tell me when I think I was 15 or 16 years old, there was something brought up, and she told me that when I was like 2 or 3, I would talk to I had an imaginary friend. She told me it was an imaginary friend. And I was like, oh, what do you mean I had an imaginary friend? I said, I don't remember none of that. She goes, well, when you was 2 or 3 years old, when you was a toddler, she goes, you would run around the house and you would laugh and giggle and play. And she told me that, that I would tell her it was the little brown boy in the mirror. And I would sit on her vanity where she would, in her bedroom, she had like one of them dressers with the big mirror on the back of it. And I'd sit on that dresser and talk to this little boy in the mirror. And she says, I call it the little brown boy in the mirror. And throughout my life and my dad's life and a couple of my sons, there's always been something that has to do with some young boy or a little boy or a boy, like a young small child entity, a male entity. So that's what part of what my dad calls the curse is that it's followed us along, and then the shadow figure, and like I said, there's the whole big story about it, and even up to when my dad passed away 5 years ago, there was some occurrences with that.
Would you like to touch on that, or
which part?
You just said that there were some things that happened after your dad passed.
Well, I'll just start at the beginning just a little and do it quickly. That way it doesn't. When my dad was 5.
If you don't feel comfortable,
That's fine, but that's fine. I'll give you the backstory a little bit to lead up to it. When my dad was 5 years old, he would stay a lot with his grandmother on my grandmother's side, his mother's side, and he used to tell us when we were kids. He said she was what you would call full blown black magic witch or whatever, dark magic.
Right.
And he said she done some stuff that he remembers her doing, and it was some crazy stuff. He said when he was about 5 to 6 years old, and up to the day he died, my dad hated stairs. Stairs freaked him out. Well, let's put it this way: stairs that went up to a second floor in a house. He didn't like them. He said went to his grandmother's house. He was walking up the stairs to go to where her room was, and that's where he stayed with her, was in her room. And he said he was 2 to 3 steps from the top of the stairs, and he said he would tell us, he said that the only thing I can describe it as is when I got to those stairs, the devil itself walked out of my grandmother's room and stood at the top of the stairs. Well, that I think is what he calls the curse and marked him, is because he saw that. He later on, as when he was 19, was drafted and ended up in the Vietnam War. And what happened there, the first, sensitive subject, the first life he took was of a teenage boy. The boy come out of the woods with the rifle, and my dad shot him. So I remember growing up hearing my dad go through, I guess you would say, PTSD now, shell shock back then. He would wake up screaming, crying at night. I remember that as a kid. And later, I learned later what was going on. But he told us later that what was going on is that boy that he shot would come to the foot of his bed and try to drag him out of bed. By the foot, would grab him and try to drag him out of bed. Well, at the age of 5 and 6, when I was 5 and 6, that's when stuff started happening, or just it happened with me, but it had to do with what he was going through. I remember seeing my dad, for lack of better words, again, seemed like he maybe was possessed or oppressed. I would watch him; he would get angry, not at us. I mean, but he would, like he was depressed in a way. You could tell. It seemed like then when he'd get angry, it looked like his face actually changed. It wouldn't look like my dad as much as it, but then it got to the point where he did get he would do things. It sounds weird. He almost like supernatural things he could do, like strength. He had supernatural strength. Seemed like it. I know this all sounds crazy, but I remember seeing it. And there was one time him and my mom got in an argument, and my mom was a bigger lady. My dad, he was a stocky man, but he only weighed about 170, 180 pounds at his heaviest, back then. And they got in an argument, and we lived in this little small trailer, and we had a wood burning stove in the trailer in the one room. But I remember him grabbing my mom, and he grabbed her by the neck, and he picked her straight up in the air with one hand, just picked her up. And I remember looking at his face, and he had this smirk on his face, and there was a piece of 2x4 or something laying or standing there by the wall. I don't know why it was there, but it was near the stove. And I remember Mom grabbed it and she hit him. She hit him across the side of the face with it. And he just laughed at her. But he put her back down, and that's when she got a hold of my grandma. And my grandma shows up. I don't think it wasn't the same day. I don't remember how many days, or it might have been a week. I'm not sure. But she shows up at our home, and I remember her coming home, and she told me and my brother, she goes, "You boys go outside." And I was like 5 or 6, and so I put my brother about 4. And she had somebody with her. And I don't know for sure if it was my great uncle Frank, but later when I met him, he kind of reminded me of the fellow that was with her. It was a very tall man, a lanky man in a suit. Well, my Uncle Frank, that's the way he looked when I met him years and years later, because we was really never around him. But I'm not sure if that's who it was. But they go inside, and I can remember hearing. I was standing on the porch, and I remember hearing the yelling and stuff in the house. I could hear them, and I could hear my grandma screaming at my dad. I could hear my dad saying, stuff going on. And then I remember started to feel this little trailer, the porch, almost like it's shaking, like it's vibrating. And then all of a sudden, the door flies open. Nobody's there, and I feel this, I guess you'd say, wind or force come through the door and hit me dead square in the chest, and like it went through me. And that's how I think whatever was going on with my dad kind of got transferred into me a little bit, and that's when I started experiencing the things that I experienced later on. And still today, there's times I can experience things and see things, and not as a psychic or clairvoyant or anything. It just seems like I can see things at times. And so that's part of what my dad would call the curse. And then it went on, and I was hoping it never got anywhere or went anywhere else besides me, but then it seemed to pass along to my oldest son, Justin. When he was about 4, his mother and I had split up. We divorced, and I would go get him and take him to, he'd spend the weekends with me. And we'd get to the house, and he's like, he'd tell me, he said, no. He said, I don't want to go in there. And I was like, why? He said, well, the house is cold. I was like, what do you mean the house is cold? I don't understand what you're talking about. He said, well, the house is cold. And I told my grandma, and she goes, well, something's going on. And eventually he told me, he said, yeah, I don't want to go in there, Dad. This is another time. And he said, I don't want to go in the house. I was like, why? He said, because there's a little boy in the house. And I said, what do you mean there's a little boy in the house? And he's like, there's a little boy. I said, what's he look like? He said, he looks like me. He said, he's the same size as me. He didn't mean he looks exactly like me. He says he's the same size as me. And he says, and I said, yeah. I said, okay. And he said, he scares me. He said, he tells me stuff, that, because his mom and I, like I said, we went through the divorce. It was kind of rough at the end of the relationship there. He said he would tell me that he's the one causing this. He's the one doing this. And he's gonna hurt me and this and that. And I was like, well, okay, what's he look like? He said, he looks like me. He said, but he's got yellow eyes and he has sharp teeth. And so I told my grandma that, like I said, I would talk to my grandma and I talked to my dad about it. And my grandma says, you just got to go in. You got to fight this thing. Take your home. So I literally, by myself went into my house and I, spiritually fought this being, or I guess you'd call it, this entity. And it backed off, it kind of backed off from him, but I would experience other things in the house. things would move from one place to another. I'd have something and I couldn't find it. Next thing I know, it's somewhere else. Just for example, I was doing some work on a block building, and I had to have one of those wide chisels to cut block. Well, I bought a brand new chisel, and I had it in the house. I had it laying on a kitchen table, and I went in. I tried to find it. I couldn't find it. And I looked all over. I thought it was in maybe in my truck. Just couldn't find it. I went to go to bed that night. Pulled the covers down from you crawl into bed. Here's my chisel laying in the middle of my bed under the covers. Wow. So yeah, so things like that would happen. And then one night I was laying in bed, I just started to doze off. Like I said, at this time I'm living by myself, and I just started to doze off. And I'm laying on my left side, and I feel, I mean, I was aware enough. I hadn't fallen asleep, completely. I was aware enough that I could feel coldness on my right side of my face. And I kind of opened my eyes. As I started to open my eyes, I hear a voice go, just clear as a bell in my ear, not from somewhere in the house or from somewhere in the room. It was right in my ear, right here beside my head. And it goes, "Are you asleep yet?" Wow. And I'm like, okay, yeah. I'm like, okay, this is enough. That's when I went through and done it. Basically, try to do a cleansing for the first time by myself, and it seemed to calm down. Things just quit. But my son would experience stuff every so often. He started noticing things. He, not in the house, but elsewhere, like I would. Like if we'd be out somewhere, I would see somebody out of the corner of my eye, or I'd see somebody walk and disappear, or I'd see somebody that shouldn't be there, or that would be there, then it wouldn't be there. He would experience that. So fast forward, several years later, my mom gets sick. She ends up passing away from cancer. But before she passes away, dad ends up sick. And they both live in his house, and they were experiencing. She, like I said, she never believed anything. Well, she put it as she never believed anything, but right. I don't think she wanted to admit things were going on in the house. They were experiencing things in the house. Dad's like, yeah, there's stuff going on. Mom was sick. He ended up getting sick. Yeah, I went over. He's laying on the couch one day, and his eyes are all glassy, and I'm like, Dad, something's wrong. And he's like, So I said, I'm calling the ambulance. Well, I called the ambulance. They come and got him. This is before my mom passed away. Well, they found out he was in congestive heart failure. I have to have a stent, medication and stuff. Mm-hmm. So they got him all situated with that. He's back home, and he's still telling me stuff's going on. Mom progressively got worse. She had cancer, went through all the deal, was kind of remission. Then she got cancer again. They come back, and progressively got worse. She ended up in the hospital. They said there was nothing they can do. She looked at us and said, "I want to go home," because the cancer had spread. She had cervical cancer. The cancer had spread through her body, got into her brain, and she couldn't put words together. She could say a bunch of words. She knew she was meant what she's trying to say, but we had no idea. It just didn't make sense. She might want to say, "I need something to eat," and it would come out, the dog likes biscuits or something, just something weird, right. Or just straight mumble. But she's laying there in the hospital, and she was able to say home. She wanted to go home. So we brought her home. She was on hospice, took care of her, the hospice took care of her, and my aunt helped take care of her. Dad took care of her. But then there's things that happened while she was there. That Dad said she would wake up screaming, and he walked in one time when she woke up screaming, or woke him up screaming, because he would sleep in a different room. And he said the blankets on the bottom of the bed are sticking straight out, like something's trying to drag it off the bed. And the whole time that he's dealing with, trying to help take care of her, he's dealing with things he was seeing in the house, which like I said, I don't know if it was the house or the things that just everything was going on that energy come back, that he dealt with as a kid and up through his life. But he said he was laying on the couch one night, and he'd see figures walking through the house and stuff like that. Well, mom passed away. Dad, so mom's been gone now for, this year will be 9 years. Dad, this year will be 5 years for Dad. And after mom passed away, Dad's like, there's stuff happening in the house. He said, I hear banging, I hear footsteps, I hear this. He said, I'm terrified. So he had me and my son come over. We done an investigation. We caught some crazy stuff in the house. We caught voices, and we caught upstairs. We caught these two male voices that said it. You could tell it was two voices say it at the same time. Help us. You need to help us, on the recorder. So I showed that to my dad, let him listen to it, and we caught other things. Well, he refused to stay in the house. He actually slept in a pop-up camper in his yard for 3 months before he went back in that house. So he finally went back into the house. and that's after he went back in the house, sorry, he started to experience other stuff. He started experiencing more stuff again. And he and I were working together at the time. He was still working. I went to pick him up one morning, and he's like, last night was a rough night. He said, I heard, I could hear stuff. He said, whatever it is running up and down the stairs and whatnot. And I went to pick him up one morning, and he's standing outside. He doesn't have his coat, his jacket. He always wore this jacket, like a blue jean jacket or this blue flannel shirt, one or the other. And he always had his lunchbox, and he had his Stanley thermos that he carried every day. It was, he had that Stanley thermos from the time I was young. I mean, as far back as I remember. Right. Well, he didn't have any of it. He's standing on the porch. And I said, what's wrong? He said, well, stuff was going on. I left my stuff in there. He said, I forgot it. He said, you mind going to get it? And I said, no, I'll go get it. So I walked into the house, went and got his stuff off the kitchen table. And when you walked in the front door, the stairs went up to the second story. And I went to open the door. And as soon as I did, I heard it. It come running, the full hard footsteps down the stairs. I opened the door, shut the door, and when I shut the door, as soon as I shut the door, it boom, it hit the side of the door, just like something just ran right into the door. And he said, "Did you hear that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I heard it." So he had me and my son come in. We done a cleansing, or not me and my son, me and my cousin and her husband. We done a cleansing on the house. Kind of settled things down a little bit, and then he was fine for a while, and then he finally said, decided to retire. And then that's when he got sicker. The heart failure, they couldn't really do anything about it anymore. He had COPD. Then we found out when he had some dizzy spells that his carotid arteries were almost gone. He was having issues. So he ended up in pretty bad shape. We took my aunt was helping take care of him. Me and my brothers were taking care of him 24 hours. We were around the clock. Somebody was there. And it was on August 12th, 5 years ago. I stayed over because I was there. I took time off of work to help take care of him. I was there quite a bit. And my middle brother was there. And hospice had appointed me the person to take and give him his medication, morphine and Ativan, however you say it, when he had issues, when he had the pain, when he couldn't breathe. Right. And so on that 12th, I'm trying to remember the exact time dates, how it worked. Yeah, it was on the 12th. He had issues. And I got up early that morning, and gave him his medication, and got him settled in. And when I went back because my brother was laying on the couch beside his hospital bed, I was actually sleeping on a air mattress in the dining room because he had the room where Mom slept closed off. It was closed. He wouldn't do anything in that room. He wouldn't sleep in that room. He wouldn't nobody. So I'm on the couch or on a mattress, and I laid down. And as soon as I laid down, I, closed my eyes and was kind of starting to drift off, I guess you'd say. And I started dreaming almost immediately that my son, Jax, which is, well, he would have been, 8 then, about 8 years old, because he's 13 now. Um, I had a dream that he was there standing beside the bed. And I remember looking at him and asking him, why are you here, Jax? How did you get here? And then, even though I was laying there in that groggy state, sleep state, I guess you'd call it, I had enough consciousness to know he shouldn't be there. So I actually woke up, turned, and looked toward that direction to where he was standing, supposedly standing, and that's when I seen this figure standing beside the bed. It was tall, or not tall, it was short, had long arms, like spindly fingers and arms, black shadow looking thing. But what I describe it as to people is, if you ever seen the old, had the old TVs when you turn them on, had that black fuzzy shape or part about it. It almost looked fuzzy and staticky. Right. I could see the head, I could see the whole body, I could see the feet. They were just basically blocky looking feet. The eyes, where the eyes were hollow, like shallow, or hollow like sockets. There was no eyeballs, and I could see what looked like right back here, wing tips, almost like there's wings on its back. And I looked at it for a few seconds, and it went across my feet and into my mom and dad's, or my mom's room, and gone. And it sounds weird, but I just rolled back over, and I went back to sleep. And the next morning I got up, my brother went home, and my other brother came. Well, I told my middle brother, so you just go home, to go get a shower, spend some time with your kids. And I said, Richie's coming over here in a little while, and he's going to stay tonight. So my youngest brother comes over. This is on the 13th now. And when he come over, he stayed, and same thing. I was on the bed. Dad had no issues. Dad didn't have any breathing problems. He didn't panic. He didn't anything that night into the 14th. Well, we got up on the 14th, and I told my youngest brother, I said, okay, I said, you go home. I know you worked all day yesterday. Go home, spend some time with your daughter. Bud's coming back later. I'll go home, and then you and him can stay. So he goes home. As soon as after he leaves, hospice calls. Says, hey, how's he doing? And I'm standing in the hallway outside, but between the kitchen and the living room. And I said, well, I don't think he's doing very well. I'm seeing things you're telling me to watch for. The modeling they called it in his legs, and which shows that the time's coming. And he's having a hard time breathing. He started having a hard time breathing. And I said, just please, can you get here quick as you can? He's not doing well. I hang up the phone, and normally I would give him his medicine, but for some reason this time I was like, I went over, I helped him, because normally he would set up a little bit in the hospital bed because he had a hard time breathing. So he was like leaning over on the side of the hospital bed. So I helped him kind of lay flatter, but not flat, lay out straight on the bed.
Right.
And I just took his hand, and I held his hand, and he was gone within no time. That was it. He was gone. And then we had everybody come over. My brothers were there, but before my brothers got there, both my brothers got there, my son came. But when I went in the couch, or went on the kitchen table, and I started drawing, scribbling this, and I have it somewhere in here, the one I did, that figure. And for some reason, I had to draw that figure, and I'm drawing it, and my brother or my son walks in. He said, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I don't know." I said, "I just have to draw this." And he says, "Just stop." He said, "Just stop doing that." He said, "Don't get obsessed with it." So I had it there on a piece of notebook paper, and my brothers come over, and my middle brother, I said, I showed him to him, showed him both the picture. And I said, this is what I seen. And I told him I said, I had an experience. This is what I seen. And my brother looks at me, said, do you remember what Dad told us, when he first started going through heart failure 5 years ago? And I'm like, and I wasn't sure what he was talking about. And he said, do you remember the one night one day he told us the night before, he looked in the corner and saw this shadow thing standing in the corner with wings, and he called it the angel of death coming to get him. And then it hit me that he did. And I was just, and I'm just, to this day, I'm wondering if that's what I really saw, and what did it really come and get him?
So today, now that you're older, you got older, and you started helping people with their paranormal cases. Are you still currently helping those?
Well, what happened is like I said, I got into reading books and everything, and then trying to find answers for myself. Later on, people knew that I was into that sort of things, and I started trying to help. Would talk to people about what they experienced. For the best I could, tried to help them understand or find answers for them. But like I told them, I said, I really don't know answers, but I can try to help you. So that led to, like I said, my son, my ex-wife and I, after we went through the divorce, my son was like 11, somewhere in there, 12. He was over, and I said, what do you want to do this weekend? He said, Dad, I'd like to go ghost hunting. I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah. So I went out and I bought recorders and I bought a camera, just like a digital camera. And so we started doing that. And then when we started doing that, that's when we got into doing some locations, starting out with, and then we do graveyards and stuff, just as a hobby thing. Then we had a couple other people join us, and we started doing residentials. So I started helping people with their experiences they had in the home. So we did that for several years. And then life just, kicked us in the teeth, basically. Things happen, with work with me, the other two guys, they had work, family. So the group kind of disbanded. But me and my son still done certain things. We would talk a lot about stuff, experiences he had, or things we would read about. And then one day he said, I've been listening to podcasts a lot. I'm like, I this is before I really got into listening to the podcasts and stuff. I was like, really? He's like, yeah. He said, there's one called Sasquatch Chronicles. I'm like, yeah. I said, I've heard about it. He said, I really enjoy it. He said, I really enjoy the Bigfoot subject. He said, I think it's really cool. It's intriguing. And he said, what do you think about it? I said, be honest with you, I've never given it a bunch of thought. I mean, I knew about Bigfoot's the subject, and the Patterson Gimlin film. I knew about other cryptid creatures, a few here and there, Nessie and all that stuff. And I said, but I've never really dove into it. So we started talking about it, and we started sharing ideas, and we started sharing things we would hear and read about or listen to. And then one day in one of our discussions, conversations, we were like, we both agreed that, hey, it'd be a cool place or a cool thing to start something, a page on Facebook where people in West Virginia can come without the fear of being ridiculed, without the the whole nonsense that some people go through, where they can share their stories, whether it's ghosts, aliens, Bigfoot, anything creepy, weird, we'd listen to. So we decided to come up with a name, and we called it West Virginia Cryptids and Strange. It wasn't Encounters at first; it was Strange Creatures or something like that. And we agreed that.
No, I was just going to say I have it down in the below in the ticker. So go ahead.
But we're like, that just doesn't. That he's like, that doesn't sound right, Dad. He said, this, we need to change something about that. He said, it just doesn't flow. It's not catchy. And so he's the one that come up with West Virginia. Well, he said, what about Encounters? I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. West Virginia Cryptids and Strange Encounters. And it wasn't until a year or two later that I'm actually doing some research and writing stuff down or and sharing some stuff with people that I realized that when you use the letters, an acronym or whatever, is West Virginia case. It took me 2 years to actually figure that out. But yeah, we started that, and I started sharing. Uh, I would share like a monster of the day, a cryptid of the day or creature of the day, something like that in West Virginia. I'd find something in an old news article or an old blog post somewhere, or and then or I share a ghost story. So that was in October, I think almost 8 years ago now. And then in the following spring, like February, March, I shared one ghost story. It was the story about the I guess bride of or whatever that haunts Fifth Street Hill in Huntington, where this lady supposedly died, and she would hitchhike, or you'd see her on the hill, or she'd be, you could pick her up, um, and give her a ride on this hill. Well, for some reason that post just caught hold, and it got shared, and it's still the biggest shared and commented post that's on my Facebook page, and it got shared. I mean, I think it literally has like 5 or 6 thousand shares, and it was just crazy. And it'll go through its cycle, and it still come around, and people do it again. But up till then, it was only like a couple hundred people on the page at the most, and then that hit, and people started to join, and then next thing you know, within a month, we had 3,000 people, and then it kept going, and people started sharing their stuff, their encounters, and then I got a couple Bigfoot encounters, and I shared those, and then that's when it seemed like the page flipped from like just paranormal stuff, or all paranormal, to more Bigfoot centric. People started sharing their stories, and then again, it came around to where people wanted me to come and check it out. So I would go talk to them, I'd interview them, I'd go check out.
No, I think we just froze there. All right, Les, if you can hear me, you froze up, and I'm gonna give it a few more seconds and see if it'll straighten itself. Because I'm afraid if I click on anything, it's going to mess something up. So let me go take a look at. Ah. All right, and it looks like we lost Les. I'm not sure why. His screen froze up, and then he was completely gone. So we'll wait, and we'll wait for him to pop back in, and I'll be able to put him back up there again. So I'm not sure if it's on his end or my end. That's what happens when you start talking about paranormal, and you know, strange things happen. So let me keep an eye on down the bottom here to see if if he's able to come back on. Hmm. Bill Rigby, are you with us? All right, I'm not sure what's happening, but we'll see. All right. So far, I'm not seeing him down the bottom, but I'm not gonna stop. I'll wait. Hmm. Bill Rigby, if you're still with us, please type a message and let me know that you are. Okay, I think I have. Okay, let's see. Not sure what's okay. There we go. Not sure what
Can you hear
happened
me
there.
all right? My computer
Yeah,
completely
I
just
can hear you.
froze. Yeah. So I'm on my phone
So
now.
okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure what was going on. So I'm
I think
glad
my computer,
you were able to uh, you were back in though. That's good.
yeah, I think
Let
my
me just
computer just,
adjust something here.
it's locked up. It won't even do anything. So
Wow,
we're, um, yeah,
I'm not even sure.
I started going to investigate people's claims and Bigfoot related, and
Uh-huh.
started talking to a lot of people. They would contact me either uh, email or the messenger, or they'd call me, and I've talked to a lot of people that claim they've had Bigfoot experiences, either experiences or sightings here in West Virginia. So that's where that led to after starting the
Let
page
me
and stuff.
share. Yeah, yeah. Let me share this with you because you mentioned your son came to you. Well, my son came to me. You know, for a lot of years, I had been up and down the East Coast, and did a lot of paranormal investigations. Well, he said to me, he said, "Dad, I want to go ghost hunting." And I said, "Why?" You said, "You don't believe in that stuff." And he said, "Well, I do. I changed my mind." I said, "Well, tell me what changed your mind." And he said, "I don't know. I just want to go." He said, "Can you make arrangements, maybe for us to go to Fort Howard State Park, which it was a federal area where there was a war."
Mm-hmm.
And he said to me, "Can you set something up?" Well, you know how kids are. He didn't wait for me to, you know, hear back from him because I had access to a lot of the properties and some of the houses that were on the property presidents stayed in. So him and my nephew and a couple friends, they go to this place, and it's like after midnight, and they go onto the property, and they're walking around with flashlights and recorders, recorders and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, the lights on the property started flashing. Then they started hearing cannons go off. They started hearing gunshots and people screaming, and the lights kept going off and coming back on. Well, they all got out of there, and they came to me and they said, "Mr. Dave," and my son said, "Dad, I'm a believer now." He said, "I don't know what happened." He said, "But it was crazy."
Yeah.
I said, why did you even go there?" I hadn't, got the word back that you had permission to go there. I said, "You get yourself in trouble, you're going to get myself in trouble." And he said, "Well, regardless," he said, "I'm sorry." He said, "But I'm a believer now." I said, "Well, what happened?" He said, "I don't know. I told you what happened." And I'm like, "Well,"
Yeah.
so, that's what it took for him to become a believer. Now, he never really seriously got into it, but after that, he started visiting abandoned hospitals and
Yeah.
asylums and stuff like that. And then he pretty much, put it to rest. Um, let's see, where were we? So then you went on to start investigating Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about that.
Um, like I said, people would contact me about their experiences, whether they had a sighting or they heard things, or so I would go either talk to them, which seems to be a lot more of the more what was done. There was a lot of talking. Some folks, like I said, a lot of their encounters were years ago, so they just wanted somebody to talk to, because they were like, hey, I don't want people to think I'm crazy. I need somebody to talk to. I'd like to share the story with them or with somebody. So that's what they did. They would call me or email me or message me. And then I'd ask, hey, do you mind if I share this on my Facebook page to see if anybody else has had experiences? And it would generate other responses. And people were like, yeah, I've had an experience in that same area, which gave validation, to the folks that talked to me at first. But yeah, I would go to certain areas when I started collecting the stories. I started going to certain areas and having to look around on public land and stuff for myself. Or like I said, when people would call me and it was kind of recent, I would go. Sometimes it wasn't like extremely recent. It might have been 2 or 3 years. For example, one of them was in Nicholas County, West Virginia. An older gentleman. Well, I call him older. He's not really that much older than me. I mean, he's like probably 10 or 15 or about 15 years older than me. But he calls me. He said, excuse me. He calls me. He said, hey, I'm going to tell you right now. He said, I grew up in West Virginia. He's 63. This was a few years ago. He said, I'm 63 years old. He said, I didn't believe, he said, I've hunted the hills and hollows of West Virginia all my life. He said, I've been in the woods all my life. And he said, you couldn't tell me at that time that the creature like Bigfoot exists in the world, anywhere in the world. He said, let alone West Virginia. Now my computer went back on. That's why I'll blue screen here. He said, but now you can't tell me it doesn't. And I said, what do you mean? I said, what happened? He said, well, I think it was 2018. Him and his wife were driving down this road outside of Drennan, West Virginia, which is outside of Summersville. And they're coming around this turn, and I have all these pictures of it here and there, and I got it in a presentation. I wish I had the picture somehow I could show you. But they're driving around this turn, and they noticed this what they thought was a bear at first, on all fours. There's coming. There's a big gravel lot. It was coming out of the woods across that gravel lot, and from where they first seen it to where this thing was at, we done measurement. It was 375 feet away. So at the time, they're thinking a bear. He goes down through there, slows down, gets up, and as they start to get closer, he comes out in the road, gets to the middle of the road, stands up, and turns and faces them. And he said, that's when I realized what come out in the road wasn't a bear. He said, I could see the face. He said, it wasn't a bear's face. He said, this thing had, the pec muscles, and you can tell it wasn't a bear. He said they stop and are looking at it, and he said then it just walks off the other side of the road, starts where there's a ditch and there's a bank. It gets on all fours again, and it goes up over this rock, like this rock edge, and goes up over. But there was one thing that they kept saying, and that he kept saying, that got me to go down there and invest and meet them and interview them. And it was something that it's completely strange, and it caught me, it just piqued my interest. And when I'd ask them to describe what they saw, and they would, and I said, well, tell me about the body of the shoulder, tell me what, they would describe wide shoulders. And both of them would say, we don't remember seeing the feet. And I just thought that was odd that, they don't remember seeing the feet on this creature once they got down toward it, once it was in the middle of the road. And I was like, that's just so weird. So me and my son went, and we interviewed him. And when I have two witnesses like that, or multiple witnesses, I will separate. I'd rather separate the witnesses and interview them to see how their stories match up, and it kind of helps me because
Right.
everybody's going to have a different perspective. One's in a passenger seat, whether one's in a passenger seat or one's driver's seat, or or if it's outside somewhere, one might be standing here, one might be standing. You're going to get a different perspective of what somebody saw. It's just that's just plain and simple. So I interviewed him, and I I asked the lady. I said, okay, I said, we're going to walk around with your husband. He's going to show us the area. Do you mind sketching what you saw? And she said, no, I can do that. So she does a sketch and draw, and she's the head and the body, and it gets down to no feet. There's no feet. It's like from the shins down, gone. So I also carry. Well, here's one right here. I got sitting here. I carry pictures like this. I don't know if you see this. I carry a book with several. I think it's 25 of those pictures. Those are CGI renderings, artist renderings, whatever you want to call them, of what people claim have seen. They've been put together by descriptions. So I carry those with me, and the reason I carry them with me is there's two reasons. One is that so if I interview you, I can lay them out and use them as like almost a police lineup, and for lack of better words, there, and you can pick what the face looked like on that creature, or you can pick multiple features from multiple pictures to give me a visual reference in my head of what you might be seeing. That's the first reason why I use it. The second reason why I use it is what I call the BS tale. And the reason I do it is if I hold this picture, and if I got these pictures and I lay them out, and I'm showing these pictures, and you look at, oh yeah, it was that one right there, and you have no reaction, most likely you're either telling me a fib or
Right.
or something. But if I watch you and I notice that you have a physical reaction, whether it triggers you or whether you wince back, or, anybody that has an experience like that, it's life changing. When they relive it, you can tell. You're gonna know. You're gonna tell by their body language, the facial expressions, the change in their voices. You're gonna know. So that's why I carry them. So she picked he picked the one out. He picked his picture out, and I was like, "So man, I wish I had that laying here." He picked his picture out, and if I show you the picture and her drawing, and you look at the faces, I'm telling you, I mean, they're not going to be exact because she's just sketching, but the similarity is to me is uncanny. They so I knew both of them seen what they were telling me they seen, but I still had in my head, why are they telling me they don't remember seeing the feet? And then I'm standing there alongside the road. I'm standing in this gravel lot, and I'm talking to the gentleman. I said, "Do you mind placing my son, not in the road, but here along the edge of the road in this gravel lot, where this creature come out and stood in the middle of the road?" And he said, "Yeah, absolutely." So he has my son stop. He puts him there. I said, "Now I'm going to back my car up, start coming down the edge of the road here. You stop me where you believe you were at." And he's like, "Okay." So he stops me. I got my phone in my hand. First thing I do is hold it at my eye level, and I take a picture straight through the windshield. I get out, and I said, "I want to show you something." And he said, "Okay." And I show him the picture. And I said, "What do you notice?" And he looks at it, and you can see the collar go from his face. And he like realizes you can't see the feet. You can't see my son's feet. You can't see from just below his knees down. So that tells me how close they were to this creature. They were within 12 feet from the windshield and from 8 feet or so from the hood bumper to this creature. So to me, somebody is that close, has that much knowledge of hunting and bears and stuff, is not going to mistake what they saw. And that to me,
Right.
that solidified it right there when I took that picture and seeing his reaction from that picture.
Mm. Wow. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's see. Do you remember me telling you that my family has property in West Virginia?
Down around Omar or something like that?
Orma.
Orma,
And
yeah.
that is near, what is that? Calhoun County?
Yes, sir.
Close to there? How
Hmm.
far are you from there?
Oh, trying to remember. Give me another little bigger area, maybe.
Let's see. Um, well, I only lived in West Virginia for 2 months, um,
I almost
but
probably
I
at the
go
minimum.
there, often. Morgantown, how's that?
Okay, I'm only 35 minutes from Morgantown.
Okay. Yeah, Orma is about 30 minutes or 40 minutes from Morgantown.
Okay, so yeah,
Um,
well, that's south though, right? It'd be
I'm
Calhoun
not
County.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Morgantown's north of me. So yeah, it's probably. I'd say it'd probably be close to him, probably 35, maybe an hour or 45 to an hour from me, most
Right.
likely. I had to look up on the map for sure.
Hmm. They have over 700 acres.
Wow.
And, I've done some turkey hunting, some deer hunting. And while I was there for 2 months, I didn't get a whole lot of Bigfooting in. But
Hmm.
I have plans to go back there. And yeah, I'm going to film a movie.
Nice.
It's not going to be. I want to say it's going to be low budget, because I don't have
Right.
all the money in the world to, do something that would, But it's not going to be cheesy. It's gonna, I'm not going to give any spoilers right now. Um, but I'll probably spend about 10 days while I'm there, and then have to go back and finish the shooting of the movie. I'm hoping to have this movie out by April 2025. Um, Let me see, what was it? Here's the name of the road that they're off of: Straight Run Road, Orma, West Virginia. But anyway, my ex sister in law, um, she had an experience with what she believes could have been Dogman, Hellhound, something of that nature. Um, her ex boyfriend, he has since passed on, but he had an experience leaving from the house one morning. He got in the car, and another relative was living there. He got in the car with him, and they were driving down the dirt path to get to the bottom of the road. And this thing started running beside them, and it stood up on two. Oh, here we go. Okay, you're still there. Okay, and stood up on two legs and was still running beside the car. And they both said to me that it was nothing like a dog. It was too big. The features were a lot different than of a dog. They both said dogs are
Hello.
not in. Can you hear me? You still there? Hmm. Okay. Let me go back to.
Are you still there? You're froze up on me now.
Yeah.
I see everything moving,
Did
but
I?
you're like froze.
Okay. So I'm froze. Um. Gosh. You can hear me, correct? Okay. Let me. Not that. Um. This. me hit that. Can you see me and hear me now?
Yeah, I can see you now. Yeah, you froze up that time. Yeah, I was watching everything.
Okay, can you hear me good?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Yeah, something popped up and it said hit reload, but some of the things might not save. Hopefully they did. I'm not sure where I froze up, but I was talking about the incident that
Dog,
Tommy
yeah,
had
dog man.
with leaving. Now my ex sister-in-law tells me that she was leaving the property, which is in Ormo, West Virginia, to go pick Tommy up, and it was still it had just gotten daylight, and she was on the road, and she was coming around a bend, and this thing was chasing two deer,
Mm-hmm.
running behind it. The deer shot off the side of the road over a railing, and this thing stood up in the road, and she came to a stop. And she said it happened so fast. She said, but when I asked her, I said, what did it look like? What did it remind you of? She said it looked like a werewolf on steroids. It stood up on two legs. It was black and it was huge.
Hmm.
I'm like, so now on my family's property, as far as Bigfoot, my nephew has sat out a few times on the back deck, and he has heard, the howls and screaming, and he would go out and he would work for a neighbor nearby cutting trees down. He said he would, from time to time, he would find foot tracks, but they've never seen a Bigfoot physically.
Right.
So, that is why I'm going to film the movie on my family's property. Hopefully, while filming the movie, something might happen. I'm also going to shoot a documentary there, and don't be surprised if I don't ask you to be part of it.
I'd be more than happy to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Are you
go ahead. I'm listening.
Are you still in contact with your ex-sister-in-law?
Oh yeah.
I'd love to talk to her about that, because I've not got. I mean, I want to have a handful, or not even a handful, just very few dog man encounters here in West Virginia. I'd love to have another one, to hear about another one.
Right. What I'll do is I'll put her in touch with you, and
Okay.
let her text you or email you and set something up. When you're out in the woods looking for Bigfoot,
Mm-hmm.
have you ever seen balls of light orbs moving about?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess you'd say yeah. I don't know if it was Bigfoot related. I was investigating a sighting. I went and interviewed a fella in Randolph County, and he told me his own whole encounter. And even talking to him, he's like, I don't know what I saw. He didn't really want to say Bigfoot. He just said, this is what I seen. But his property, and the property adjacent to that, I got permission to stay, but he didn't have his sighting there. He had his sighting a few miles up the road, but there was other supposed activity and sightings within that area. vocals and everything and things like that. But I'm on this property. I'm sitting in a field, and I used to have an old town and country van, and I had it set up where I had everything in it I needed. I had a bed in it. I had all my camping stuff,
Nice.
cooking, everything. But I now have a truck and a little camper that I pull around. But even in my truck, I have everything set up in the back where I have a bed. But in this van, I had everything. So I'm sitting in the middle of this field, and it's cold, rainy. I believe it was in November, if I'm not mistaken. And it's probably 3 or 4 years ago. And I'm sitting, listening, because they're telling me you hear vocals a lot in that area. So I'm just hanging out, listening, and all of a sudden, like if I'm looking through the van, you consider that 12 o'clock position, to my 9 o'clock position out the driver's window, something catches my eye. And I look down to the corner of the field, which is probably 120 yards away. I see this, probably from that distance, I'd say probably about close to softball size, maybe a little bit smaller, white light, but it doesn't emit light to where it's shining on stuff. You know what I mean? Like like if it was a flashlight or something like that. This is like a soft white round light. It's the best I can explain. Almost like it had I got a little camp light. It's kind of got a filter type lens on it or whatever. It diffuses it, and it's not extremely bright. It looked like that, and I'm watching this light move, come from if I'm looking down from the left, it moves across, and there was a tiny little cattle pond. It's not even very big. It's just a little tiny watering hole in the corner. It moves across that pond, and then it's kind of going in and out a little bit, not completely out, but like fluctuating. What's the right word? Not pulsating, but the brightness would seem to go up and down a little bit, and then it's gone. It disappears. And a few seconds later, it moved across my 9 o'clock, probably into close to the 9:30 position if you're looking at the clock. And a few seconds later, it pops back up, and it's about at the 11 o'clock position, to my left. And it does the same thing. It just moves along, and there's a fence line there, and it moves up toward that fence line, and eventually just is gone. It disappears. And that's the first time that I've ever seen a light. And I've heard about them, and I've heard people talk about them, and I was like, I don't know, I've never seen anything like that. I don't know how I feel about it, but I seen that. Didn't have any explanation for it, because next morning I looked as could there have been something here. There was no way there was any other. What couldn't have been anybody walking, flashlight or anything. Because like I said, it didn't emit light. I mean, if somebody had a flashlight shining toward me, I would see it. I could tell, and I could. And the moon was not bright, but it still was like out, cloudy, overcast, rainy. But it was enough where there's enough ambient light that I can see down that way, and I could see the light, but no shadows of a figure that was walking or anything holding light. I mean,
Right.
The best I can say. I mean, but I asked the property owner. I said, "Hey, and I know you guys say that there's activity here, and this is a different guy than I had the interview with. He was the actual property owner that I was on." And I said, "Have you ever seen strange lights?" And he's like, No, I ain't never seen anything like that. And then a couple of days later, 2 or 3 days later, he gets a hold of me, and he said, "Hey," he said, "I've been thinking." He said, "I haven't seen any strange lights." He said, "You're talking about, just strange things happening." He said, a year or two ago, I can't remember how long he told me. He said, "We were working, my brother and I were working in that same area on the fence, right in that same area." And where the fence is, if you look behind the fence on the bank, there's another little cabin. I'm sorry, I talk with my hands a lot. I'm sorry. There's
That's okay.
there's an old cabin, and it's all cleared. Everything's cleared out around it. There's no underbrush. I mean, there's the big trees that are still there. He said, we're working on the fence. And he said, I look up because something like makes him, he said, I just feel like I had to look up toward that area. And he said, there's a big tree on the left side of that cabin. He said, when I look up, I see this figure lean out from behind the tree. He said, and this like there for a few seconds and goes back. And I was like, are you meaning Bigfoot? He said, no. He said, I don't believe this was Bigfoot. He said, it was like a black figure that almost looked shadow. It's like a shadow. He said, but I could clearly see it. It was in daytime. He said, so I started watching to see if there's maybe somebody up down and see if anybody moves. He said, I watched. He said, and I could see clearly the cabin, the trees, and both sides of the cabin. He said, I could clearly see if somebody moved from that tree, ran behind the cabin or anything, or ran from that tree and go to another one. He said, but within a few seconds after I seen this thing, on the other side of the cabin, there's another big tree. The same thing happens. This figure leans out from behind the tree, looks at him for a few seconds, and disappears and goes back behind the tree. He said, I never seen anybody move. He said, we worked the fence. He said, never seen a soul. And he told me, he said, that's the only thing I've ever seen strange, around where I had seen the light. And I was like, well, that's, it's not, Bigfoot related, I don't believe, but it's pretty cool, and it's pretty cool that I saw the light there as well.
Yeah, I've never seen a Bigfoot, but I'm sure the encounters, that I had were Bigfoot related. Whether it was the stones being thrown, eye shine,
Right.
the smells, footprints, and stuff like that. So, but maybe the day will come, maybe the day won't.
Yeah.
But let me see here. What do you think? What do you think a Bigfoot is, and what do you hope for it to be?
Be honest with you, I'm not ashamed to say I have no idea. I have no idea. In my heart, because it's the easiest explanation for a lot of stuff. It's some kind of undiscovered primate or some kind of relic hominid, because because of the physical evidence that it leaves, but again, you have a lot of people don't like to talk about it. You have strange aspects to this, the subject that happen that are hard to explain. So are they both related? I mean, I don't know. Because the physical things that you find, to me, definitely seem like it's an animal. It's got it to me. It would have to be an animal. So I'll listen to those stories, or definitely collect those stories. And then the strange ones, a lot of people won't listen to. I'll listen to those too, because I think, to me, if you don't listen to them, I mean, in my opinion, you're kind of, I kind of upset some people when I say this. You're kind of doing an injustice to the field, for one, and injustice to you, or kind of injustice to you as an investigator, I guess you'd say, and an injustice to your witness or your client, or what you call them.
Right.
Because maybe what they did experience isn't Bigfoot. Maybe it's something completely different, and you need to put that somewhere. Maybe eventually we'll find out what that might be. Maybe the reason they're calling it Bigfoot is because that's what they have in their lexicon, that's what they relate it to, because Bigfoot and Sasquatch and all this subject has become so mainstream anymore. That's what they can relate to. So whether they're seeing that or something different, they can only relate it to it. You still have to listen to it, I think. But like I said, as far as what I think they are, concretely, I have no idea. I really don't. And I don't think, and to me, really think anybody does. I mean, there's a lot of lot of theories out there, a lot of speculation. But eventually, maybe we'll find out. Maybe somebody will. I don't know if pictures or video will ever do it, but maybe one will come up dead one time. Whether it's hey, maybe somebody will shoot one, or maybe one actually does is hit by a vehicle and somehow collected that way, or some other natural causes, or maybe it's an unnatural cause or a natural cause, and they're able to find one. I think that'll be the time when we can actually say what they really are. To be honest with you.
Right. I have a lot of people ask me, why do you do that? Why do you go out and look for Bigfoot? Aren't you afraid that Bigfoot could possibly harm you, could hurt you? I'm like, oh, that thought is always on my mind. But read a lot of the reports. You don't see too many reports out there of them harming people. Not saying they can't or won't, but the reports are just not that great. Of a Bigfoot. Now, I've read of people coming up missing, but then I've read, like, one of the stories I read, there was a child missing for 3 or 4 days out in the cold, and they finally found the child, and the child said, "I'm okay." And they were like, "Where were you? Where have you been?" And the little boy states, "A bear took care of me."
Yeah, I believe that.
I just can't see a bear taking care of a child, And I really think, I'm sure you've heard of that story. I'm pretty sure that it was a Bigfoot, probably a female.
I believe that was North Carolina a few years ago, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you'll hear some of those stories, where the majority of the ones I've collected, it seems like they're just as surprised to see you as you are to see them. A lot of them leave. You do hear, screaming at people, howling at people, but then again, those are reports people that I guess you'd say were able to survive maybe the encounter. Maybe the people that haven't survived or may have not survived had an encounter. We may never know, So like I said, it's all in theory and speculation. But yeah, like you said, most of the reports you read, it doesn't seem like they're, I mean, I'm sure they're, if they are a wild animal, they do have their times. They are going to be, I mean, it's just like going and mess with a black bear. 99% of the time, a black bear will run from you. It will leave.
Oh yeah.
But that 1%, if you mess around with its cubs or you get too close, it's going to hurt you. And I think it kind of can be the same thing with these creatures. You're on the wrong place in your wrong time. It can happen.
When I go out in the woods and put boots on the ground, I always have a sidearm. But I don't think this has something to do with the movie I want to film. But I don't necessarily carry that sidearm to protect me from Bigfoot. I carry it to protect me from other wildlife, and or you never know who or what you're going to run into. So that's the reason why I carry a sidearm. I would never go out there without one.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, grew up in the woods. I never carried a gun, and I actually didn't start carrying a gun with me until probably 4 or 5 years ago, really. And mainly the reason I started carrying one is the population of coyotes here has skyrocketed. You hear about people, getting, and I've had it happen to me, getting surrounded by coyotes. And then you hear the stories about the mountain lions, which I've never seen one, but I've talked to a lot of people here in West Virginia. Says, yeah, they're here. And that's one reason why I carry a gun anymore. And honestly, for some crazy folks that's out there, you have to protect yourself, and you never know. And when I go, majority of the time, I'm usually by myself. So that's another reason why I carry.
Now, years ago, I did a paranormal event. It was a weekend event in Maryland, Darlington, Maryland. And I had a number of celebrities, come to the event. Well, father and his son, they drove a good distance. When the event was over and they were leaving, they hit a mountain lion. Did some damage to the car, but they killed it. And I said to him, I said, Darlington, Maryland, a mountain lion? I said, are you sure it was a mountain lion? He said, yeah, it was a mountain lion. I know what mountain lions look like. Familiar with them. I'm like, wow.
Well, I mean, when you talk to the DNR here in West Virginia, and I don't want to get in trouble for saying this, but because what I've talked to one DNR officer that had 45 years in the service with the DNR office, and he told me the same thing as two others have told me. What we're to tell you, when we're approached about the subject, is the eastern mountain lion no longer exists in West Virginia. They're extinct, which is probably most likely true, because they were hunting extinction in the late 1800s. He said, but what we really don't tell you, but we do know, is that western mountain lions are starting to migrate east. I think there's been a couple of times where there has been in like the northern up, somewhere up New Hampshire or something like that, up in that area, or New York. I forget where it was at. One was hit, and they found out it was a western mountain lion. They done some type of DNA test or something. I forget how they did, but they determined it was a western mountain lion. So he told me that, and also two other DNR officers that are still in service have told me that. Like I said, I've talked to a bunch of people said they've seen them. Then there's a local gun shop, pawn shop, feed shop, whatever you want to call it. It's all everything encompassed into one store here. A guy that I know owns it, and he knows that I go out, and he knows what I look for, and every time I'd walk in there, I'd go in there and I'd buy my ammo, or I'd buy a fishing license, and he'd look at me and said, "Hey, did you find anything yet?" I'm like, "No, not yet. I still talk to a bunch of people. I haven't seen anything." So one day I beat him to the punch. I looked at him. I said, "Hey," I said, "I know you have a lot of hunters come in here. You're a game checking station and all that. Has anybody ever told you they've seen big cats in West Virginia?" And he looked at me like I asked him the most taboo question. Like he was shocked. And he looked at me, and he'd done this head bob, like come down this way. So we walked down to the far end of the counter. He said, "Hey, a couple years ago, he said, a regular come in, and he said, I was talking to him, and he comes up to me, and he says something to me, and he said, I killed a mountain lion." And he said, I looked at him, and he said, you're full of it, man. He said, there ain't no mountain lions in West Virginia. They're extinct. He said, I'm telling you, I killed a mountain lion. And, we're in Marion County, and Wetzel County line's just, probably 10-15 miles from here. And he's in Wetzel County.
Right.
Said, looked at him, he said, you don't believe me? You come to my house. He said, it's in my freezer. And he went to his house, and in his garage, he had a big chest freezer, like a lot of folks have. And they had deer meat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I got one.
Said he opened that freezer, and he looked in there, and he said, I was stunned. He said, there it was. He said, there was a mountain lion in this guy's freezer. He said, rest down, picked it up, was looking at it. He said, hold it like this, looking at it, and he said, examine. He said, it's a mountain lion. So he went on about his business, went home and whatever. And I can't remember if he said it was a couple weeks or a couple months later. He said he went to Pocahontas County, West Virginia, where back in the 70s, there was actually two, either, I don't remember, both of them were killed, and one was killed and one was caught, but there's actually, some caught in the 70s, and you can still find that newspaper articles, but they claimed they were escaped from some establishment. But anyway, his brother-in-law was a DNR officer in that county. And he said, we're sitting along the bank there fishing, going to trout fishing. And he looks at his brother-in-law and he said, hey, I had a customer come in and say, he killed a mountain lion. And he's like, yeah, probably. He's like, what? He said, you say they don't exist here. They're not here anymore. He said, I was holding this thing in my hands. And he says, brother-in-law, they said, I don't doubt it. And again, he said, he's shocked. He said, because he's been told there's no mountain lions. And then his brother-in-law went on to tell him, he said, the only way to know if it's a native eastern mountain lion, he said, if we had the body, we could do an DNA test, and we could tell. He said, two, if it's one that has, has escaped from like say a zoo, or if it's somebody had one, because there's a pretty big, large cat black market across the United States. And he said that could, if it's something like it had been released from that, it should have been inoculated, and we could do a blood test and tell that. And then then he hits me with the bomb. He said, three, if it's one that we have released, it'll have a tattooed number in its upper lip so they keep track of it. So his brother-in-law, whether he was being serious or not, he admitted that West Virginia, the DNR or whatever institution has let mountain lions loose in West Virginia.
Wow. Les, God, I hope I ain't losing my voice. How many books have you written? Is it three?
Yes, sir, 3.
Yeah. 3. Okay, I'm going to throw them up there real quick. West Virginia Cryptids and Mark A. Randall.
Yeah, Mark did all the artwork for that one and the Indiana one. Uh-huh. They're not huge books, but they're pretty informational. They got beautiful artwork he's done, and it's got between a 250 and 350 word write up for each cryptid and creature that those books. And yeah, there's the two Mark. And Mark also. And then Mark also did the cover work for that one. Okay. That book is, because people, ask me, what'd you write about in the book? I didn't write. Technically, I didn't interject my feelings or anything in it. Basically, that book is a compilation of several interviews that I've done. How am I trying to say? Interviews, reports I've taken, and it's all, for the most part, all in, the witness's word. I mean, it may not be grammatically correct, it's in their voice for the most part. And now that I'm thinking about it, and I was telling you about that, I don't know if you can see it. There's that picture that the lady drew, because it's in the book. I don't know if you can see. There's no feet. Wow. And there's the picture that he picked for the face. I forgot there was.
Now I'm sorry. These 3 books that I just put up there, are they available through you? Or?
You can get them on Amazon. I do have a few here at the moment. If you would like to have one signed, you can get a hold of me and we can make it arrange.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would like to. I'm sorry. I would like to get all 3 and have them signed. Yeah, definitely. Let me see what time. Okay, We're coming up on the second hour. Let me take a look here. Oh, I forgot to throw in the weekly humor. I hope we don't never run into a Bigfoot like this. There we go.
Yeah, oh yeah, Dan Vito's.
Danny DeVito. I've met that guy a few times. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, we're coming up on the second hour. I'm gonna throw one more question at you, and then I'm gonna give you the time to let people know how they can get a hold of you if they want to do so. Where do you stand on rock stacking tree structures?
To me, most of the rock stacking that I see that a lot of people try to claim is Bigfoot related, I think is probably more man-made, because a lot of times it's near streams and very common. A lot of people do it here. A lot of people do it, and but there are some that are unexplainable. And one of them I actually found just outside in Tucker County, just outside an area where I actually found my first print. It was I mean, I don't know if we've had enough time for the story, but anyway, I found it after my son, my friend, and one of my son's friends, we were all camping and doing some investigating, and then we was just sitting around, and we heard a howl, and it's the first time I heard a howl. Still don't know what that was, but I went the next day, went in the direction of where we heard the howl by myself. My friend had left. My son was still at camp. His friend was still with him, and I told him, I was like, we don't have the best phone service here, but you can follow me, through the phone on GPS. I was like, if I don't get back in a certain amount of time, you come, have somebody come look for me, or if you hear me shoot in the air, you come look for me. Anyway, I went over in that area, and where we're staying, you go through a pine forest, and then you go through a bog. It's a peat moss bog, because it's up in higher elevations here in West Virginia. We have like peat bogs, and you go through it. Then you go across this black stream. It's they call it the black stream because of the tannins from all the peat and all that stuff turns the water brownish color. And then you go through another bog, and then you get into laurel bush, like along this edge hardwood, and then you get up into hardwood. So I get up in the hardwood, and I walk up, and I find this rock stack. It's probably 3 feet, maybe a little over 3 feet tall, 3 to 4 feet, and it's not little rocks like you see, like a lot of these folks you post about. This thing had the bottom rock, every bit had to weigh 300-400 pounds easily, and it just went from there up to about 4 feet tall. So that was the only rock stack that I've really found that I still could be maybe man-made, but why would somebody go in? Because it's like through all that trouble where I had to go through, half a mile to 3/4 of a mile back over in the woods and stack these rocks. It didn't seem, it was
right.
Not possible. It's possible, but why would anybody do it? And then after I found that, I walked not even 50 feet from it, and there's because there's big boulders around here, sandstone boulders, this type of sandstone, and I find one that's soccer ball size, somewhere in that neighborhood, and it looks like it just been bashed. You can see where it'd been hit on this bigger boulder, and it's just broke apart with some of it. Now, as far as tree structures, I'm not a great proponent of tree structures. I have found stuff that to me, majority of them are natural. I haven't found anything really that has stuck out to me that I can't explain. I mean, because there's always something there that gives me doubt. And as an paranormal investigator, I hear a lot of people say, when in doubt, you just got to throw it out. Well, if I see something that's, it could be, it's natural, or somebody's made it. Or for example, one big structure that I have pictures of, somebody told me, like, hey, we found this, here you go to this location. Well, I did. Well, the location happens to be somebody's field right off the side of the road. And you could tell that it's just a turkey blind or a hunter's blind that someone built, to turkey hunt field.
Right.
And I found other little small ones here and there that people call structures. And I think, like I said, just natural stuff. The only one that I guess you'd call it a structure that I've really documented, and I don't know why it's there, is when I found a print. I found two partial prints in Randolph County, and still I don't know what the prints are. They weren't great prints, but they were impressions. I cast them, and where I found them, you could walk just a few feet away, and there's a little stream, and I got the water to mix my plaster, and I poured the prints, and I decided, well, I'm gonna cross the stream, follow the stream up into the valley. And this is in an area, I don't know if you know where Spruce Knob is. This is below Spruce Knob. Spruce Knob is the highest point in West Virginia. But I'm in the valley, and like I said, like I tell other folks that I go out with in other areas, that this area is completely different than a lot of the eastern woodlands. I mean, it's completely, there's a reason why they call Spruce Knob, Dolly Sods, and stuff like that, the Pacific Northwest, or little Canada of West Virginia. It's got that feel to it. So I hike up the valley. I follow the creek, and I don't know how many people out there hike a lot, but I use a creek for what I call guardrail. I stay with the creek, and then I can flank off a little, or circle back and stay within that creek and investigate. And I'd do that. I'd go so far and keep doing that in that area. But this is the first time I was there, and I'm coming back down. I'm looking for the same type of black mud, or that substrate, black decaying material substrate that's there, looking for prints. So I'm stopping, looking in the area, and I hear something on the bank behind me. There's a bank, and there's rocks and trees and pine trees, and I hear something, and then I turn, whatever was up there took off running. So I don't know if it was a bear, a deer, or maybe it was a mountain lion that people talk about, but I didn't see anything, but it took off running. So I go back down, I get back to the cast, they've set, I pull them, and I decide, this is a pretty interesting place. I'm going to come back next weekend. The following weekend I get back, and where I crossed the creek to go to hike up the valley, and the print cast was like I said, like 10 feet probably from the creek. There is this, where there was trees, there's an X. Something took two small trees that went from probably, 3 size of a baseball, pretty long, no branches on them, and put them between these other two trees in an X pattern where I crossed the creek. And I'm like, nobody knew I was here the week before. Nobody knew I was coming back. Why is it like that? And then I've talked to a few other people, told them about it, and I had a couple people like, yeah, that's their way of telling you, don't come back here. Don't, you shouldn't be here. This is our land, or whatever, however they want it. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty cool. I said, but I haven't listened. I go back here quite a bit and still haven't seen it. But yeah,
and you're still alive. Yeah.
But that's just one thing I found that was pretty. It wasn't startling, but it was eye-opening. Why is it there? That was one kind of structure that I found, that I experienced, that I thought was, that's pretty neat.
Right. Let me just let me see. I'm looking for some here. Okay, I want to put that up there. Go ahead and tell everyone how they can get a hold of you. I just put the one of the links down below in the ticker. Yeah, let people know.
You can get me. Well, probably best just look me up. Les Odell. Get me through Facebook Messenger, because my West Virginia Cryptid and Strange Encounter page, for some reason, Facebook done something here a while back, and they call it a business page now. So I have to have a whole new app just to check my message. I don't get any notifications. But if you want to send me a message through it, it's WV Cryptids and Strange Encounters. I do check it probably once or twice a week when I get a chance to. Or just like West Virginia Cryptids and Strange Encounters, or sorry, just look up Les Odell. I'm on there. You can also email me. The best email is wvcase304@yahoo.com. You can get a hold of me through that.
Okay. All right, Les, I want to thank you again for being a guest tonight. I'm sorry we had some technical, difficulties, but what I'd like to do is bring you back on again, and hopefully we won't have those issues. Yeah, I definitely want to bring you back. Bring you back on again as a guest, and I'll be in touch with you about the 3 books. I definitely want them. And I've had a great time. I had more questions for you, but ran out of time. And we'll have you back on again.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
But yeah, you be safe out there. Happy squatching.
You too.
And I'll be in touch with you.
All right. Yeah, just you can message me and I'll shoot you my phone number.
Okay, yeah, I'll do the same. I'm going to shoot you my phone number as well.
All right. Well, we'll see you.
All right. Thank you, Les. Thank you again. Good night.